You ever wake to silence that screams louder than any siren? One morning, the lake rose in absolute quiet. No alarms, no frantic yells, just water inching into fences, flooding decks, slithering into 86 luxury homes like it belonged there. I didn't run, didn't call the cops. I watched, because you learn something about land when you build on it. Nature doesn't negotiate. You thought you owned it, you eroded the trust. And the shoreline remembers. That silence. I wasn't ready for it. The world didn't announce what was coming. No sirens, no lights, just water claiming what should have been mine. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? This one's going to sting. It all kicked off early one day with a roar that stole my breath. Bulldozers revving like angry beasts, engines heated, roaring, like a freight train parked on my front lawn. I stumbled outside in my pajamas, half asleep, and everything felt surreal. And there she was, Veronica Wilson, power suit, heels digging into the dirt, clipboard balanced like a weapon. Her smile was predatory. It looked like she'd just annexed the shoreline. She had quietly bought the land next to the lake and started building 86 multi-million-dollar homes without telling a soul. When she saw me there, in my pajamas and confusion, she waved like she was inviting me to a party she owned. Her voice cut through the machinery. "This is our land. We can do whatever we want with it." I don't know what stunned me more, the audacity of that statement at 6 a.m., or the way her lips curled in genuine, smug delight at my shocked face. She declared war, plain as day. Dust swirled around her like spirits mourning. Machines groaned, and the lake turned a choking brown, littered with floundering fish. I felt something inside me erode, watching that sacred water turn into chaos. My sanctuary shattered under the weight of steel and greed. The noise overwhelmed me. The growl of engines, a neighbor's dog howling, coffee-hot panic running through my veins. People peeked from their windows with the same stunned looks I was wearing, a collective horror. In that moment, I wondered if I was overreacting. Maybe construction noise was normal, something I could get used to, but a deeper whisper in my gut told me that was just the opening act. Trying to be neighborly felt surreal, but I mustered it anyway. Fresh cookies, plate in hand, I drifted over through the commotion. Workers parted around me like a silent sea. I offered her cookies, hoping, maybe, for some dialogue, civil conversation. She barely glanced at the plate. Her eyes chilled. She stopped pretending civility. She looked right at me and said, "Reed, you should know better. This lake will be ours soon enough." That condescension, sharp as glass, crushed me. I stood there holding cookies while she turned and barked more orders at her crew like I was a fly she'd squashed accidentally. That's when I knew it wouldn't be settled with small talk or goodwill. She had a plan, and I was the one standing in her way. Back home, I felt hollow and furious. I rifled through old papers my dad had stored, deeds, permits, correspondences, blueprints. I almost gave up when I found a steel box painted dust white in the darkest corner of the basement. Inside were blueprints of the lake, dated back to the 1970s, with intricate lines, labeled "Emergency Flood Valve, use only when lake threatened, opens underground springs." My father, practical, poetic, literally built a hidden flood control system that no one knew about. I held that paper and felt strength wake up inside me. He had expected someone like Veronica. Within days, signs went up. Private property, no trespassing, every 10 feet like military turf. Legal letters thick as bricks arrived daily, stamped with logos and timelines engineered to scare. The HOA unleashed psychological warfare. They erected wooden walls 8 feet tall along my property, like jail walls. They pushed concrete slabs, twisted rebar, toxic smells dogging my windows, cages around my home. Cameras stared at me from angles I didn't even know existed. I walked to get the mail, feeling the weight of surveillance bearing down. Then came the ridiculous fine, $8,000 for koi for pet fish. I stared at the number thinking my eyes were broken. That broke me in the weirdest way. I laughed until tears burned my cheeks, then wrote it into evidence. Then I found a note, anonymous, slipped under my door at night. No return address. This project is illegal. Check blueprint approval number 12. You're not alone. Taped on the back was a page from the HOA legal charter. Section 12.4, highlighted, Federal Water Overlay applies. My pulse raced. Someone was inside. That might have been my lifeline, or a trap, but I needed to act. So I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, timestamps, conversations, surveillance footage. Everything became evidence. My paranoia sharpened into strategy. When that community meeting rolled around, I showed up early with a thick folder of facts. I sat quietly until they called order, then set it on the table with a thud that echoed. I spoke, voices hushed off, describing missing permits, environmental violations, construction on regulated floodplain, cost-cutting, bribed officials. I presented workers' audio clips. The room went still. Veronica paled. She ordered security to remove me. I said calmly, "I'm a citizen with a right to speak the truth. This project is destroying the environment." Silence cracked the room open, and I wondered who was rearranging their allegiance. The retaliation was swift. Electricity, water, cut. For repairs, they said. I boiled snow and ate beans by candlelight. I had no power, no heat, just the dripping faucet in my dreams. Neighbors turned away. I questioned myself, my sanity. But then Fred knocked with soup and an oil lamp. A quiet visit, understanding eyes. "Once you open that valve," he said, "there's no going back." It was comfort and warning at once. Then came Mike Thompson's knock, former HOA tech staff. Terrified, he slid me a stack of files. Flood studies falsified, cost-saving foundation shortcuts, altered building code reports. He'd risked everything to keep the truth. I took the files, heart pounding. That night, I prepared. I bought a dive suit, heavy-duty tools, waterproof flashlight. I wasn't a saboteur. I was protecting a legacy. I read the blueprint one last time by lamp. In a storm, rain hammering, wind roaring, I slipped into the lake's black depths. My lungs screamed, visibility was nil, but I followed Dad's map. The emergency valve was exactly where he promised. Rusted shut. I fought it, turning with every ounce of strength, lungs burning, vision dimming. Then a crack, metal protest, and springs gushed. The lake surged like a living thing waking. Water invaded the construction site. It was beautiful and terrible. Machines drowned. Equipment tumbled. Foundations cracked. My heart thundered watching nature reclaim what was stolen. At dawn, chaos reigned. Workers scattered. Adamant screams. Veronica stumbled barefoot in her suit, screaming that this couldn't be natural. Emergency services arrived. Fred stood calm and said, "I noticed the lake rising early." I didn't contradict him. I'd never let him face trouble for me. Then Harold, the reserved board member who'd fined me, stepped forward. "This is what happens when you build in a floodplain without proper safeguards," he declared, loud and undeniable. That sentence broke Veronica's posture. Justice turned public. It wasn't triumph. Watching those homes drown was surreal. Walls bulging, frames cracking. But it was justice, slow and feral. A few days later, aerial photos of the wreck went viral. Multi-million-dollar homes underwater like grave markers. Investors panicked. News networks ran breathless coverage. Inspectors, government agencies, environmental groups descended in crowds. The findings were devastating. Fraud, zoning violations, bulldozing wetlands, bribery, danger, the hall of shame of development corruption. Veronica fell fast. Her assets seized, cars repossessed, legal fees avalanche-sized. The HOA dissolved. Land reverted to county hands. Investors sued. Construction companies pointed fingers. Meanwhile, neighbors, once suspicious, emerged with casseroles and apologies. Fred was hailed as my champion. It felt healing, more than bitter victory. Compensation came. I funded cleanup crews. They cleared twisted metal, concrete slabs, embedded rebar, pollution. We restored shoreline, restocked fish, planted native trees. We held a lake rebirth gathering. Neighbors brought food. Kids drew thank you signs. One little girl asked me, "Did your dad build the water?" I knelt and said, "Not exactly. He gave it a heart." She nodded in recognition without words. Then came the real miracle. The water receded faster than experts predicted. The lake regulated itself, returning to its old shape. Wildlife returned. Birds, fish, wildflowers. Reporters called it environmental alchemy. Scientists studied the geology. I quietly dove back down and slowly closed the valve, finally sealing the water flow. It clicked. Balanced. Dad's design completed. Later, I told reporters, maybe lakes hold natural flood control we don't understand. When they said spiritual, I just shrugged. I believe in torque. They called me the Lake Guardian. I accepted that quietly, with humility. Dad believed systems had a soul when built right, and people too. Now I sip my coffee by that reclaimed shoreline. No more bulldozers, just birdsong, wildflowers. The lake, deeper and bluer than ever. Harold visits regularly. Mike now works with ethical developers. Neighbors wave. The oak my father planted, that I once worried might be lost, is towering. When I sit beneath it, I hear frogs instead of drills. I often wonder if Veronica ever figured out what happened. I doubt she did. She never knew I held all the cards. The valve still lies beneath the lake, silent, balanced, trusted. Not a weapon, but a promise of protection. Tools are for care, not vengeance, but anyone asking to build here must first ask about flood risks and environmental duty. The lake held. My father's foresight held. I didn't build something perfect, but I defended it. And that's enough. If you're still here, tell me. Where are you watching from? Ever tangled with a petty HOA or seen landscape fight back? And if this tale hit you, hit that thanks button. I'll see you next time.